Jim Spindler is from Florida. We're very fortunate to have him here today. The only reason he's actually here today is completely divine intervention or coincidence. He's here for a national event down in San Diego, and he drove up this morning because on Tuesday they had the trade show and event, and on Thursday they have a trade show and event, and today was the open field trip day. He could have been on a tour bus touring around San Diego and going up to some sod farms in Nuevo, out near Paris or Temecula, but instead he chose to be with us, and we want to thank him for that. And Jim is a specialist in his field. He comes with not only Peace Corps experience, but some amazing stuff to tell you about. And I would not have invited him and personally wanted him to be here if I didn't think it was something each of you needed to hear. So please give him your full attention. Thank you, Jim.
Well, good morning. I'm from Florida, but I've been spending a lot of time in California. In 2014, I was out here 13 times. So I've spent a few times out here. I'm getting to know California a lot better than I ever thought I would have. I'm the agronomist, the director of agronomy for Ecology, and also one of the owners. And they're the people that make the moisture manager for John Deere Landscapes. Before I go much further, though, I'd like to, who am I talking to? Are we all landscape and parks people? Any golf guys or anything outside of that? So I can sort of orient it towards that. We're going to talk about a few different things. Moisture manager is going to be the focus of it, but just a little bit of education before we get too far into that is, guess what? You're in a drought. I didn't think you knew this. This is a drought monitor showing in the United States, and it happens to be this part of the country is the most red of reds. So a little bit more focused. The West is having a lot of issues. I was in Salt Lake City a couple weeks ago. They're not getting the snows that they're expecting. So they're expecting to have some issues just like you are here. They rely on their snowfall to fill their reservoirs and provide all the water they need for their use. So that's going to be a challenge. A little closer to home, the darkest red, where are we? Right there. And that stands for exceptional drought, and they're expecting it to last a long time. So anything we can do to manage water better in the landscape, the better. This is out of Texas, but I'm sure you've seen stuff like this driving up from San Diego this morning on 5. These kind of signs, almost every electronic sign was saying something about saving water. Also, another issue is the cost of water we're experiencing. The USA Today did a survey of how much water increased over a 12-year period. And this is the least increase. And you see they're pretty substantial in the 30s, 20s, 30s. We can step it up a bit. Long Beach, 64%. LA, 67% increase in water costs. Get San Jose, 89, almost 90% increase in water costs. And this is only since 2000 and it's a few years old, so it's increased even more since then. Santa Cruz over 100%, Vegas 130% increase in water, San Diego 141% increase in water costs in 12 years. So not only do we need to save water to conserve water, but the cost of water is making it awfully difficult. I'm running into situations all the time where homeowners are saying, I don't want that $100+ a month bill for just water. I'm going to abandon the yard. And we're trying to help people avoid that. They like, we're in our American culture, when I've traveled overseas, the Americans are really strong on wanting to have a nice landscape, both at their own home and parks and things like that. So to step it a little bit further, we got this thing here, these charts that show about turf response to heat and drought, which even complicate things even more. We see where there's the control, so there's no stress, and how they look pretty good. We've got heat, we have drought, and then the combination of heat and drought. And the relative water content is most effective when you got heat and drought together, but the drought is the most single factor that affects it the most. We look at turf quality, it's the same type of thing. The combination together, the turf quality dives quickly. but drought is even a more stronger effector to turf quality. So anything we can do to minimize drought situations, the better. And with water restrictions, that gets more and more difficult. So anything we can do to manage water better in the soil and make it more available to the plant, the better. So we have a number of technologies out there. We've heard about wetting agents or surfactants. We've heard about superabsorbent polymers. This final category, a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. It's called hygroscopic humectants. So what are these? How do these products differ? And they do differ in how they work and what they do. We see water repellent soils here. You put a hose on a turf area and it flows on the surface like that, you're water repellent. That's not so good for water conservation because it's not getting where you want it. And some microscopic examples of water beating up on soils. And that happens, especially in these western soils where you get hydrophobic, you get the organic coatings, and the water just doesn't want to go in to those soils. And what you have is water will go where it can find its easiest way through the soil, and you get these channels. So when you don't get water dispersing throughout the soil very well, your plants aren't going to respond well. You're going to get isolated dry spots or localized dry spots. And this is the cause of those. Your soils become hydrophobic, it resists water, and the water is either flowing across the surface or finding these channels. So wetting agents, most of you probably have used wetting agents at one time or another in turf management and others. It's a product that reduces surface tension to a liquid, usually water, so water can penetrate into the soil more effectively and broadcast itself and disperse through the soil more effectively. The surfactant is just another word for a wetting agent. It stands for surface active agent. A substance such as detergents, that's what detergents are, wetting agents, that reduce surface tension, allowing water to enter the soil more effectively. So chemistries change dramatically. Performance of the chemistries vary. Some are made to let water penetrate into the soil more effectively. Some are made to allow water to flow through the soil more effectively. Some will also help water stay in one location in the soil a bit more better. So the saving water feature of wetting agents is that it allows water not to flow across the surface or channel, but to enter the soil and disperse more readily throughout that soil profile. When that occurs, you're getting better use of your water, and this is how they help affect better water use. So it allows the soil to hold a greater volume of water, as you can see right here. More even dispersal, and the studies indicate they're better when they're applied more frequently. Superabsorbent polymers are the same kind of gels that occur in baby diapers. And they're being used and promoted a lot more for water conservation. There are two types. There's a linear type that dissolves in water, but these are usually used for reducing irrigation through reducing erosion in fields, and they can be injected. But they're not very common in the turf industry. The insoluble ones are the ones that you find, these polyacrylamides and stuff. They form a gel. A little bit of this turns into that when it's exposed to water. And these are some of the brands that are out there. So what happens is they're good for installation of ornamentals and things. You get these into the soil. When you water them, they expand and hold they're like sponges. They hold the water, and then the plant can draw off that water to a certain point. So it can reduce the wilt and water requirements of new plantings. The challenges with them is they're difficult to incorporate into established plantings, either ornamentals or lawns, because they have to get into the soil and it's hard to get them in there. They can only absorb whatever water is plentiful, and then there's some concern about how long they last, and also they will compete with plants for water when you get down to a certain level of moisture. They release about 95% of the water they hold. So these are just some examples of how the roots will go through these polymers and feed off of them. The other challenge, if you don't use them correctly and you put too much, how many of you experienced pushing plants out of pots when you've had too much in there? And that's another challenge. So hygroscopic humectants is another technology that's totally different than wetting agents or superabsorbent polymers. They're a blend of hygroscopic and humectant products. And what I'm going to do is change screens real quickly. I have a digital microscope hooked up to this computer. And one of the ingredients that is the hygroscopic portion is this white powder. And I get lots of jokes about putting this up my nose and all of this other stuff. But I'm going to put it under the microscope, and it's going to show very effectively what a hygroscopic material does. And we'll come back to this. But I'm going to breathe on it for a minute, and it'll speed up the action a little bit. You see what it's doing? It's taking the humidity out of my breath and converting it into liquid. And that's what a hygroscopic material does. If you worked with straight urea and you've gotten it on sidewalks, that's a hygroscopic material that'll form a little puddle of water. So we're using materials, though, that are food grade. This powder is actually used in bread, toothpaste, chewing gum to keep them moist and pliable during storage or in the baking process in the terms of bread. So you ate some of this probably this morning. We'll come back to this in a minute and see how it progresses by the time I'm done. So a hygroscopic material is a material that absorbs or attracts moisture from the air. A humectant is a substance that absorbs that moisture and then holds it. And I told you this was used in things like bread and toothpaste to keep the moisture and hold it. The humectant is used in things like skin moisturizers, shampoos, cosmetics, to hold moisture. Yes, sir?
Are they organic or synthetic?
They're, for the most part, organic. The product that we're talking about is USDA is rated 93% bio-based. So it's nearly all organic. So these are products that are going to track humidity to itself, condense it into water, and then hold it for the plant to use. And this is just an example of the molecule. It's a long molecule that attaches itself to a root surface, soil particle, organic. And it's like a tiny water magnet. So it's attracting those water vapor molecules to itself. So what happens if you've got water in the soil, either through rain or irrigation, you either lose it to gravity into the groundwater, the plant uses it, or evaporates and works its way out into the atmosphere. And as the amount that is evaporating, it's capturing that again, forming it into droplets, and then the plant absorbs it in through osmosis. And this repeats the process for up to 90 days. It's eventually broken down by microbes. It's organic. It's food for the microbes in the soil. It's for all types of plants, not only turf, but even in agriculture. It has a couple patents, and it's been around since the early 90s, but it's becoming a lot more popular in many areas due to water restrictions, costs, and things like that. It was invented in Australia as a dust control product where it would moisten the dust and keep it from flying up. And our product for this is still being used in many parts. We've got a big test going on in some mines in Chile where the calcium chloride, magnesium chloride they use in dust control is rotting out brake lines of this heavy mining equipment. And they need something that's a lot more natural and safe. So we're seeing this a resurgence in this kind of product for dust control. The chemist who invented it, though, took it out to his own lawn, and the whole lawn was green. It was in the rainy season when he treated it. And you see the square there, and in the back up here, it was a half rate. And this was 6 weeks into a drought without water. And he discovered, hey, I got more than dust control. I got something for plants here. When he came to the United States in 1991, this Dr. Jim Barrett at the University of Florida was the first one to experiment with it in the greenhouses. They thought it was going to be a nursery greenhouse product. So he took it to the top bedding plants in the greenhouse and found that he could reduce the watering by 50%. And he had made that statement. He'd never seen a product that could do that before. And this was one of his commercial greenhouses he worked with. And on the right-hand side, they were watering that 3 times a week with overhead irrigation and supplementing it by hand watering twice a week. On the left-hand side, they reduced all the hand watering, eliminated it, and reduced the watering to twice a week instead of the 3 times a week. So not only saved water, it was saving labor. Cornell worked with it, or Clemson worked with it on poinsettias in a commercial greenhouse. The poinsettias are grown on tables. The edge plants are more exposed to the heat, and they dry out first. They end up to be smaller and poorly developed and had to be sorted at shipping time. With a drench, they were using 2 ounces per gallon of drench water. They drenched these pots, and the extension agent who did this study found that the roots were better developed, the plants were bigger, and they didn't need to be sorted at shipping. So another application in the greenhouse. This is something we do on a regular basis. Grab a couple of patients, do a drench on one, not the other, turn off the water. And you can see after 6 days of no water, the one treated is hanging in there all right. Turn off the water for 23 days and give it water. And within 4 days of the ones treated to come right back, the others that weren't treated are dead. Now to exaggerate that even more, we've got a video that our Austrian distributor did. They took 2 plants, and treated one, not the other, and they just turned off the water, no water for 28 days. And then every 5 minutes during daylight, they took a picture. It was a time-lapse photography. See every morning how they perk up, they had a little bit of moisture. Pretty dramatic. 28 days without water. Now we don't recommend that. The product's not a hose that eliminates watering, but it can really make your water go a lot further. All right. Now in Florida, when we got into turf, this was a country club that was on sand, on very shallow sand. There was coral rock just underneath the surface. And they were struggling on the left-hand side. You can see they used all the wetting agents, but it was still drying out too fast. And they gave us 2 of the worst fairways to try. This is in the mid-90s. The right-hand side was treated, and this was within 10 to 11 days. And he was so happy, he went and treated all his fairways every 90 days throughout the year and eliminated all his dry spots and helped him manage his water a whole lot better. This is a test that Bill did up at Lake Arrowhead Country Club. I don't know if you want to say about it or just it's a slope.
Yeah, if I may, this is a fairly steep slope. There's flowers at the bottom. The picture was taken from a cart path. If they irrigate the slope heavy in the spring or the fall, the cart path gets water on it and it freezes at night, and it's very unsafe. It's right at the I think the 17th tee, between the 16th, no, 15th, it's between the 15th green and the 16th tee, and it's a slope, and all we did was we went and treated, and the guys at the club they treated half of the sloped area and didn't treat the other half. We see the same thing on any type of landscape mounds or mounded places that get irrigation. By the time you turn the irrigation up for what's on the slope, you've created a wet spot or maybe an unsafe condition at the bottom of the slope. And by treating the slope, we were able to keep the grass very, very green. This is used not only there, but at other places on hills and mounds and humped areas. I mean, I'm trying to, if that's the right word, but I think you guys know what I mean. And yeah, berms and stuff, and you can just go spray the top where it dries out. Because otherwise you're trying to turn the irrigation off, you're trying to come hand water, and to heck with all that. This just works perfect.
This is another one of Bill's plots, the high desert, right?
Yeah, the bottom picture is really important. You guys can see in the top picture that there's this green square. It's a corner with weird irrigation because it was at the edge of the golf course, and there's these big rainbird golf heads with really long throw. And if they adjust the head, the picture at the top, I'm standing where the irrigation is. If they turn that head all the way to the left, the irrigation hits the tree and goes out into the empty lots. So they have the irrigation aimed kind of at the pine tree at an angle across the screen. So it leaves this corner excessively dry. So we did the plot there on purpose. But if you look at the plot, you can just tell it's kind of green, that's great. But when you go to the reverse angle and you look back the other way, you can tell that there's holes in the grass at the bottom of the picture on the bottom right. But the grass where we treated is very dense. So that area there, the grass looks green from far away, but it's actually thin grass that's already weakening. But if you look at the other angle, the grass is really dense. And it's those weak spots in the grass where we have the dry areas that spread and weeds that come in and intrude and all those other problems that go with it. And by doing this treatment, and then the interesting thing about this was the length of time that we could get in that setting to get that length of control, we just got 7 to 8 weeks. And we've talked about this. You had to, in that setting, retreat at about a month and a half to really get it to work right. That was really under-irrigated on that left-hand side.
Some other plots on slopes.
We did that on purpose.
Yeah. So, yes, sir.
Quick question. I don't know if you're going to cover it, but are you getting better results in using the liquid version of Hydretain versus the granule, or does it matter?
It really doesn't matter, and Bill has more experience here in California with it, but the reason we offer both, the liquid has to be watered in right away in order to be effective. It needs to get into that root zone and attach to the roots. If you don't have the ability to spray or you don't have the ability to water it in right away, the granule is better because it can sit for 5 days before it's watered in. So that, a lot of our landscape and parks people have gone that direction because of the convenience and not the ability to. The failures on the liquid have been because they're left on the surface, it dries and glues to the grass blades or in the thatch, and that's where it stands. And it's not going to feed your roots any water there. So I've seen they work well either way.
One other question, with the Hydretain, how long is the residual for the product?
We say up to 90 days, but we're saying like in those previous plots, in extremely high temperatures, the microbes work a little bit faster, and you maybe 60 days, 70 days. But up in the north, I think in the Sacramento area where it's cooler, San Francisco, we're getting 90 days. In the desert out here, as you go east out of here, it's a little bit shorter because of the higher microbial activity. Yes?
So is this product designed for so we always have problems around the edges. We don't have coverage like that. Would we be able to just spread it around the edges to retain the moisture there, but will it be drawing moisture from the surrounding areas?
It's not going to compete with other areas for water. Remember, it's condensing vapor, so vapor is working itself up through the soil, and it's intercepting that and grabbing it. It's not like trying to rob from laterally across. So,
because normally we just, we see a dead spot or something, we throw a little seed and a little
Right.
cover for it, but if you could just put an application of that there, will we see some growth?
yeah, and I've run into people like on the liquid doing curbs.
Yeah.
In Tennessee, I ran into this. Where guys were taking just like 6-inch border, a double strength along curbs where it would heat it up and burnt out like tall fescue. They were finding they eliminated all that because it kept enough moisture for that turf to perform.
Way better than bumping up 5 more minutes or what we normally do when we're watering.
Yes.
98%.
Yeah, and we've seen people effectively work that way. Yes.
Have you done a cost-benefit analysis with regards to the amount of water? I know it varies by region, but the amount of water saved at cost versus the cost every 79 days to put that in the product?
I don't know if Bill's done that. We have a golf course in Austin, Texas, University of Texas golf course that they buy a tote every year. They cover through fertigation the entire golf course. And his water's free, but he has to pay the electricity for the pumps. He said just the electricity savings alone paid for the product. And he didn't even factor in because he had free effluent. He was grandfathered into that. So that was the electricity. Now these water costs that you're seeing, where you're seeing like I was in Sacramento, Palisades, a Presidio Country Club right at the north end of San Francisco. It cost them $7,000 a night to run irrigation on that golf course. And if he can eliminate one of those a week, that's paid for the product quite easily. So we're seeing that. I don't know, Bill might have some more stories for Southern California about the economics and where it's paid for itself.
Yeah, and just to back up for a second, you asked about the difference between granular and liquid. The number one thing is some guys just can't water it in properly. It's just impossible. At that point, they have to use the granular. But the trick on the liquids is there's places where we can use the liquids. And what happened, we gave sample bottles out that were quart bottles with dispensers, and people raved about how great it worked because they put it out as a hose and dispenser and put out with plenty of water. And then they bought 2.5 gallon jugs and cases and went and tried it in different areas, and then came back and said, well, I don't know if it works just right, because they couldn't water it in the way that it was getting watered in with the hose and dispenser. So some of the guys using it in the liquid form, and I'll get back to your question right quick. In the liquid form, some of the guys use it on bunker edges that typically dry out because there's hot sand in the bunker, and everybody that's played golf can see this all the time. And that's the first place that burns out. But they also use it on mounds and other places, and so they were using it for just specialty spot treatments in different areas. And we were spraying golf greens with it. We tried all different rates for golf greens. And for safety, we're trying to make sure, like, we didn't get, like, more disease if we used it, like, would that be a problem, or, what, so we tried on nurseries first. But this has kind of evolved over, like, actually now 4 years.
It's more than that, it's like 6.
Yeah. But now, what was that question again?
The economics of using it.
Well, here's the thing. If you're thinking of using it on wall-to-wall and all the whole area that you have, the best way to do it from an economic standpoint is just turn your irrigation down, and right when it first starts to show drought-stressed areas, is to go spot treat with it, leave your irrigation set at the same level. And the joy of this for guys that have mounds, like in golf courses, they're either going to have to dig and trench in freaking drainage, or they can just apply this stuff to the mound and leave the irrigation where it was, and they don't have to go dig in drainage. I mean, you could go out with a little hose and dispenser bottle and put a little bit in the bottle and just, with a quick coupler and a hose, and just hit the mound. And the mound looks cherry, and you don't have mud bog or water-logged area at the bottom of the mound, and you're saving water because you left the irrigation turned down. We did a park demo in the city of Chula Vista, down in Chula Vista, and we had an appearance almost like that right there, down in Chula Vista in a park, and we weren't sure what kind of results we get because we had kind of a heavy soil, so we did 2 different areas, and it was we were really impressed. I'm sorry, go ahead. I can talk you guys to death. I'll take all your time.
This is India. This was a sports field that had to be ready for a televised event. They only had a half a month. This was the first trial with the moisture manager, and you can see where they put it out 7 days later. One of the things I like to point out about this is the color response. The products really don't have any nutritional value to them, but we find that the plant's able to more effectively take up fertilizers because it maintains a film of moisture in the soil. And for nutrients to move from a fertilizer source to the roots, you need a film of water for those nutrient ions to flow across the roots. And this maintains that. And we see a lot of places where we see a traditional fertilizer type response, even though this doesn't have it, sort of releasing, allowing the fertilizer to be taken up. These are just some spot areas. I told them to hit it with a little urea and Hydretain or moisture manager at the beginning. And this was 15 days later. We kind of turn around with Bermuda. Now, seeding is another big use for it. This is a seed study that Penn State did. We didn't know they were doing it. They found the seed germinated faster, higher percentage of germination, and better survival. And this was another study that harvested the plants. You see how much better developed the roots are, a larger plant, and better density. And when you get out in the field, this is an example, and it doesn't show up well on the overhead, but on the left-hand side was treated, and the right-hand side is not. The entire area is seeded, and this was 5 days after treatment. We saw a dramatic increase in the seed germination there. And we see this used in a lot of grow-ins, not only seeding, but sodding and sprigging in the south. This is hydro seeding. This is in Minnesota on the right, with and without in the foreground, and Florida in the bottom left. And it goes, the liquid just goes right in the tank. We have people like the Army Corps engineers and using it on a dike establishment, things like that. This is in Wisconsin, a bent grass green where they just weren't getting any kind of germination. They went in the center and took one of those quartz Bill was talking about and sprayed it, and you can see the effect on increasing the germination rate. Now this is out of just north of Las Vegas, one of the new guys with John Deere. He planted some ryegrass. That was the control. 4 days later, he put a topper on it, a little bit of germination, a topper, a moisture manager with a 600, I guess a humic product. It's a little bit more germination than the Alps combined. A topper, this humic product, and the moisture manager, you saw a lot more germination. So we're seeing good symbiotic relationships with the product. This is on sand. This is sod to be grown as we shipped overseas. They washed the sand off. And with the moisture manager, they had a 20% increase in fill-in rate. This is an example in Minnesota, non-irrigated turf farm, where they bought enough product to do all but 50 acres of the field. And in a severe drought, you can see the difference. What was sort of interesting is on the right-hand side, you see the pink hue. That's a red thread disease that developed. And as we hear in a lot of turf, if you keep a turf healthy, it's going to resist pests and diseases, and this illustrates that very well. Now we get into landscape. Here's in North Carolina, begonias on the left treated and no subsequent water other than rainfall. The right-hand side was untreated, and they had to water those a number of times throughout the season just to keep them alive, looking that good. So it made a huge difference in flower beds. And Bill can tell you about places like Santa Anita and Del Mar. They use it for their color changeouts. This is in lawn care. This is a development, and I've seen this in Sacramento as well. Water restrictions, once a week water restrictions, where the entire development is taken care of by one landscape firm, one lawn care firm, but they sold a subscription to the moisture manager, and you can see the foreground, the subscription versus a neighbor who ignored it. So it made a huge difference when you get into water restrictions as to how well turf performs. This is in Dallas, Texas in 2011. This is August. That's when they were making all the news about their extreme heat and drought. It was over 100 degrees every day, no rain. This was actually being watered every day and still getting that result. So they applied the moisture manager and took a picture every 7 days. So there's 7, 14, 21 days. And by the 21st day, they had reduced their watering from every day to every third day. So 2/3 water reduction and brought the turf back. Same thing with this second set and a third set. And we suggest you get into the spring with it on lawns to prevent it from going dormant rather than trying to bring turf back. This is going in the fall of 2013, November. This is North Carolina, non-irrigated. This was applied 3 weeks before and no irrigation. And you see it still helps, even as things are cooling down in North Carolina, it helps keep good turf color. This is in Dallas again. Granule was applied about 6 weeks before as a non-irrigated turf, and it's helped that turf stay looking decent even without the water. This is an extreme where we talk about condensing moisture. This was an area where in Florida where a neighbor was burning trash, caught the woods on fire, and normally when a fire is burning like that, it dries out the turf, burns up to the house and takes the house. Firefighters couldn't figure out why it didn't happen in this situation. The homeowner said, well, just a month before he put moisture manager out. And we were in the Miami papers, the Orlando papers for saving this guy's house. I wouldn't guarantee that, especially here where you have the fires you have, but it was an interesting thing. It's showing how it's condensing the moisture coming up through the soil and keeping that turf from drying out enough to burn. This is planting trees in Minnesota during that same drought years at sod. They put in a whole boulevard of trees, and every other tree they put moisture manager in the drench. 2 ounces of product per gallon of water. And just when they drenched in those root balls, they did every other tree. And you can see treated versus untreated. Pretty dramatic. And then I found out later on they went back and retreated a lot of the missed trees and saved all but a couple in that study. This is a Clemson study in a nursery setting where they were transplanting live oaks up to the next size pot. And they decided to put one zone at what they consider their optimal watering schedule. They put one zone at a third less than the optimal. And then the third one, they treated with a drench of the moisture manager and cut the water back a third as well. And statistically, there's no difference between the optimal and the moisture manager treated. But they put on the same amount of growth with a third less water. Yes?
Having tests with utilizing this product with native plants, what I've been finding is like we've been doing a lot of natives and water conserving type plants, but the establishment period is critical because most of these plants, they don't get any water at all. But when you plant them, you do have to water them in. So we're finding we're losing some plants because of watering and have the uses.
The closest to that has been the roadside establishments with turf. I don't know, Bill, if you've got more local experience with.
Well, along the lines of what you're saying is what Lake does at the horse race track at Delmar, when he plants all the flowers before the meet, he brings in some crazy amount of, all the color that you guys would see around the clubhouse, it's like Disneyland or Spring Farm style, all these plants. They pre-plant and they dip it. Would you explain that process? But before everything goes to the ground, it's treated with moisture manager. And just so everybody knows the language here, moisture manager is Hydretain and Hydretain is moisture manager. The moisture manager has a 15% load of surfactant in it, but the active ingredient in moisture manager is Hydretain. So Hydretain and moisture manager, we may use the terminology, you've seen some of the demo plots we've done. Moisture manager just has a 15% load of surfactant, and it's the same percentage of active ingredient, which is Hydretain, but more surfactant in it. But tell him about how he does the dip or dredge.
Well, we see a lot, if you're doing live transplants, you can create a bath of, again, there's 2 ounces of product concentrate per gallon of drench water. You just dip the whole tray in, soak everything, and then plant them out. And they do that, and they also include some cider grow, which is I don't know if I'll have time to talk about it briefly, but and that allows that plant to establish itself a lot quicker. It's not drying out in between irrigation runs as much and things like that. We also have people that will then plant, instead of doing a dip, they'll just, when they do their drenching in, they're putting it into that water that's doing the drench. Now in seeded products, I imagine it's going to be similar to what we saw in a lot of your seed germination things. We see that on roadsides and dikes and things like that. We like to spread the seed and then spray it on top of it or spread the granular with it. That way the seed gets coated and has helped that moisture be imbibed a little bit quicker into the seed, because it's not drying out in between rainfalls. So I don't know if that answers your question. The natives are a little bit different. I would expect it to work similar to what we see with grass seeds and ornamentals until you really play with it. I'd love to hear your results if you do try it.
Give me some product.
Well, I can maybe work that out. Cool. Here's potted plants. A lot of salesmen are from Missouri. They want to show me first before I sell it. And this was a salesman who does all the John Deere international sales in the southern hemisphere. He treated one of his pots and not the other. He went for a week's vacation and came back to this. Said, hey, it does work. So he went up and sold a whole bunch. This is one of our guys in the Dallas area where he went away for a 10-day vacation, had the right hand treated and not the other. And you can see, while the right hand one's not pretty, it's still alive and it'll respond and come right back once it's treated with water. It's used in agriculture. This was transplanting fruit trees, citrus. They were watering 3 times a week, and they went in and did a diluted treatment, and they reduced their watering to once a week. This is a study with tomatoes between the University of Florida, Penn State, and Ohio State. These are processed tomatoes, and they found that in a drought year, the 3-year study, they had 40% higher yields. And the 2 wet years, there was no difference in yields, which gets back to one of those questions we had. Will it keep a wet soil wet too long and cause root rots? And this study, we were told that tomatoes were particularly susceptible to root rots, and they would have seen it there. And the yields were no different. So a few years ago we did a study at Davis, University of California, Davis, one of your last wet year. And we had higher yields, but not a whole lot higher. We'd like to get another study going there with the drought now going on. But this was just treated at planting only. This is out of Trinidad, again showing seed germination rates. The peppers and tomatoes were treated right at seeding, and you can see after 7 to 14 days the speed of germination. The lettuce on the right was already germinated when it was treated, and that sort of shows you that fertility effect I was speaking about, in that that's able to take up the fertility in the soil a lot quicker, and that plant's developing that much quicker just from having that moisture film in there for the nutrients to move along. This is a ebb and flow hydroponic system where the water flows through those ceramic beads only twice a day. And they were getting wilt in the afternoon. They included some product in the water, and they eliminated that wilt. Here in California, these watermelons on the right were treated only at planting. They were put down as right along the seed. You can see how much faster they germinated and filled in that field. That's about a month later after planting. This is in Africa, where after a month, again, treated at planting only on the right-hand side. That plant seed germinated that much quicker and filled in. And the other thing I like to point out is that, as Bill saw in turf, see how the weeds developing in the untreated area? That's developed quick enough that it's shaded out any weed development on the right-hand side. What we're finding is there's a lot of symbiotic relationships. Do you work with mycorrhiza or beneficial bacteria yet in this part? This is a mycorrhiza manufacturer out of Oregon. He combined our products. On the left-hand side is the moisture manager mycorrhiza versus on the right mycorrhiza alone. So we're finding that the moisture manager allows that moisture condition to remain more optimal for faster infection by mycorrhiza and better performance by beneficial bacteria. So again, the left-hand side is with moisture manager, the right-hand side is not. Saw the same kind of effect with spinach. And it makes sense. These fungi, beneficial fungi and our bacteria need optimal moisture conditions to perform best, especially when it comes to infecting the roots and getting that symbiotic relationship developed. And this is a field, sports fields in Florida. It's on Marathon Key, which is the first key heading out towards Key West from Miami. All the water comes from the mainland. They had to reduce their water. They were watering every day, and they used the product and reduced their water by 2/3 and still maintain quality. This is our government. We have water management districts in Florida similar to you do here, and we have a couple of them that since the liquid has to be watered in right away, this is an exemption letter, so they recognize it as water conservation, allow you to water it in even though it's not your watering day. So they give you permission to do that, knowing that in the long term you're going to be saving more water. So the benefits, we've covered that about eliminating and minimizing drought stress. You reduce overall watering. We see water reduction up to 50% or more. Enhanced nutrient and pesticide efficiency. Can eliminate localized dry spots. It's great in transplant establishment. Seed germination, crop production is improved. Accelerates grow-in and can extend retail shelf life. We got a lot of nurseries now treating plants going to the big box stores like Home Depot and Lowe's with this because they don't get paid unless the plants sell, and how good are Home Depots at watering their plants in their nursery? Not so good. So it's sort of an insurance policy. On the liquid side, it's a 9 ounce per 1,000 or 3 gallon per acre application rate. When you're transplanting and all that, 2 ounces per gallon as a drench. And I have a literature here that gives more specific applications. But generally, it's a 3-month application, except for you get in the very hot areas, like we see here in Southern California, and it may be every 2 months. Comes in a variety of sizes. We also have a granule. It comes in 40-pound bags. That goes out at 120 pounds an acre, or 2.7 pounds per 1,000. It's right now in a greens grade. We may have a standard grade available coming into the season. But a bag covers just under 15,000 square feet. That can go out and be watered in up to 5 days later. As I indicated early on, the USDA is certified at 93% bio-based. So it's safe for animals, safe for children. We're just shy of 100% organic, but it's food-based products that are in it. And just to give you an example of how it's made the news, this is out of San Antonio.
It said that it will cut your water usage in half. What it is and how it works. New on the 90s.
An organic liquid that could cut your water use in the yard by half. So why haven't we heard of this miracle product that's been around for years? That story in the 90s.
Despite today's rain, water restrictions have made all our lawns in South Texas pretty thirsty. Now there's a product being offered that could actually cut your watering and water bill in half. The 19's Brian Mylar has more on the product from Australia called Hydretain.
Grass around South Texas has been crunchy brown all summer. But parts of the Cordillera Ranch golf course have stayed green thanks to an organic product called Hydretain. It's sprayed on the grass every 90 days and watered in so that it gets down to the roots.
It's molecules that draw in moisture, hold on to it, and when the root needs that moisture, it can take it up from that molecule.
This white powder is the active ingredient in Hydretain. You can see when exposed to humid air, it attracts moisture. The golf course put down Hydretain twice during this summer drought on tee boxes and other dry areas. They found an immediate green up and long-term improvement.
When we started putting out this product, we saw the benefit right away.
The course superintendent says he saved thousands of gallons of water by using Hydretain.
With the same amount of water, we were getting a better green, a better color, having to water less often.
The product was developed in Australia to keep down the dust. Here it offers a 50% water savings on grass, more on other vegetation.
Now, a quart of Hydretain would be enough to treat the average suburban lawn, and that'll sell for about $40 at specialty turf services. Now, fans of this stuff say that it'll save you much more than that in water bills. Now, for more on Hydretain, you can visit our website, ksat.com. It's
Come on. And here's another one that.
Can using a product like this on your, can using a, can you?
Okay, in the video. All right. Are any of you guys into lawn care? Lawn care operators? Because we have a program called Hydretain Advantage for those who do that gives you free marketing materials and internet support and things like that. So you can sign up for that at hydretain.com, hydretainadvantage.com. And I have some of those. These are our websites. Moisture Manager has its own website that we maintain, and then you get the literature there. Also links to hydretain.com where you have the videos and things like that. And that's my number there, and my email. I could go into Cider Road, but we're getting late, and I probably should stop here.
Yeah, I apologize. I'll make a deal.